Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome to the Off the Dome podcast. I'm super excited you're here because I've got some really cool stuff lined up for you. So you might be wondering, what's this podcast all about? Well, let me tell you. Here we dive into the incredible world of marketing, sales, and customer success for brands that are currently using HubSpot and their integrated marketplace apps. So imagine you're running a SaaS brand, right? And you've got your team, a fantastic platform, and then bam, you hit a wall. That's where this podcast and my team at Continufi come in. From conversations about marketing automations and accepting payments online to enhancing customer onboarding, this podcast is all about breaking down those barriers and boosting your game so that you can achieve more results and create better experiences for your customers. Here's the deal I'll make with you. You follow the channel, and I'll help you in exploring how the best SaaS brands and creative minds leverage their resources and capabilities to not just survive, but thrive. Each week, we'll look at real life examples, innovative strategies, and tips that you can apply to your own projects. Whether you're someone who just got their Series A and wondering where you should invest your newly acquired resources, you've already launched your IPO, or you're just curious and wondering how you can get into SaaS yourself. I'll be sharing interviews with industry experts, real life experiences that'll blow your mind, and even some of my personal insights launching my own brand and helping SaaS brands scale from 1 million to 20 million ARR. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. But it's not just all about me and the guests on the show. I want to create a community where we can all learn and grow together. So don't be shy, hit that follow button and connect with like-minded individuals, and let's chat in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts, ideas, and any topics you want me to tackle. This channel is as much yours as it is mine. Plus, we're going to have some fun challenges, some Q&A sessions, and maybe a few surprises along the way. You see, launching and growing a SaaS brand using HubSpot and its integrated marketplace apps doesn't have to be boring or stressful. It can be inspiring and, dare I say, exciting, discovering new possibilities and hearing different ways of working that can make your work easier to do. So if you're ready to level up your HubSpot marketing and RevOps knowledge, or just want to gain some fresh perspectives, hit that follow button and let's embark on this journey together. Thanks for tuning in, and I can't wait to see you in the comments. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Off the Dome. Today, we're talking to Ryan Anderson. He is the founder over at Markiserv, a graphic design firm that works building brand identity, print materials, a whole bunch of stuff. Ryan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everybody. Happy to be here, and thank you, Josh, for the invitation. It's a great platform you have going here, so happy to be a part of it. My name, as Josh so much introduced here, is Ryan Anderson. I've bounced around a lot in my career, so it's been quite the journey from A to B for me to be sitting in this chair talking to you all here. I started my professional career in Connecticut, where I started, your standard ground floor marketing coordinator for the military commissary space, and launched a bunch of brands into the military commissaries. This is really kind of my toe dip into marketing right out of college, where I got my MBA in business administration, also in marketing. Additionally, from there, moved to North Carolina, where I started basically a huge dip in my career into the e-commerce and digital space with marketing, which was a huge change from what I was used to being traditional consumer packaged goods, or CPG industry, for those who are unfamiliar with the acronym. From there, really absorbed as much as possible, learned all about SEM, SEO, graphic and web design, just really scaling throughout this the company that I was here, which was LC Industries, one of the largest employers of the blind and visually impaired, actually in the world, right here in North Carolina, which is pretty exciting.
Nice.
Grew to run their marketing and e-commerce nationwide. Once COVID hit, I realized there was a lot of opportunities in the market, so went from LCI to a challenge and growth career at Align Technologies, where I ran their professional B2B marketing team and growth marketing for all practices, so orthodontic, general practice, and doctors around the country, to really help them grow their Invisalign sales within their respective communities and teach them how to market and do marketing digitally and traditionally. From there, bounced around to SMA Technologies, which is a SaaS company. So pretty, as you can kind of see, it's a very diverse background, where I led their digital marketing team over there, where we grew two brands. One was an automation brand, which is more of an enterprise sale motion, and the other being a product-led motion, both automation for banks, credit unions, and general businesses that required some automation lift. And now today I run and I founded the graphic design company Markiserv. And that's what's gotten me into that, being traditional marketing and e-commerce, is that through that journey, I realized I really enjoyed graphic design. So I wanted to do something that I enjoyed for the rest of my life. And here I am. It's been a wild couple of years running this company, and I'm happy we did it. And doing what you love really pays off in the end, even if it's hard in the first couple of years. But it does pay off.
I know I was jumping on your guys' about page, and it's like you started with 2, and now you're at
7.
7.
Mhm.
So that's good growth. I mean, it's better than I was at a conference the other day presented by Lettuce. Is helps like a CPA, kind of like QuickBooks, and it was a whole bunch of solo entrepreneurs trying to figure out how best to navigate this marketplace. As do I stay nimble and just me and figure out how to scale that? But then, of course, you know as well as I do that you hit some glass ceilings where it's like, all right, I need additional hands, and I don't want to always have to be like a hunter where I'm going out looking for business and then doing the work and then going back out and finding business and doing the work. It's like eventually you just kind of transition into that business owner, and all right, now I just got to find work and pass it off to my team to do the actual execution.
It's
What
a
was
very
it?
hard. Go ahead, Jeff, sir.
Oh no, yeah, I think you're going to allude right into my question. I know this is kind of off topic, but what was the biggest like aha moment for you that all right, now I got a good solid foundation. Let's hire a team.
That's hard to really kind of understand. And it was a challenge for me. When you're a solopreneur or solar entrepreneur, you're used to doing everything yourself. You're used to being on the front lines, and you're making good revenue if you're considering about hiring somebody, but you just aren't sure to make how to make that step. And frankly, it's a little scary because then you have to worry about paying them. You have to worry about healthcare if that's something you want to
Right.
offer. So it's a very hard balance you have to consider. And then really, it's about if you bring someone on, can they alleviate something that's really bogging down a lot of time in your day to day so you could help scale the business? And that was the turning point for me with Markiserv, is where I was realizing I was growing the company by myself. I was spending a lot of time doing designs for these brands, but this other side of the coin was how much time was I taking away from actually scaling the company, being more of the sales role, the leadership role? And you just don't know until you take that risk and you hire someone to do some of the work of the, as you put it here, part of the agenda, the meat and potatoes, right? The part of
Right.
the work that we do to get the company to scale and grow. It's really about what your risk tolerance is. So you just have to go with it. If you have the overhead, if you have the capital to support someone, I would highly recommend, if you're a solar entrepreneur, to go for it, because you just don't know what could be on that other side of the coin. End of the day, if it doesn't work out, you could always reduce your costs, but it does free up a lot of overhead to scale. Speaking from experience, it's just the mindset's hard to get into.
Right, right. I guess taking a step back even before this, what made you? I mean, we both have a bit of a generalist career and doing different industries, it's kind of being all over the place. What made you choose to focus on graphic design?
Really just my passion. I would just be, it's hard to describe. I guess when I'd be home after a long day of work, just doing your standard marketing or leading a team, or whether it be e-commerce, which was fun, but I realized what really got me out of the bed at the end of the day, where I felt really energized or I didn't feel tired, was when I was doing things that I enjoyed, which was graphic design, creating for the employers that had hired me. I liked what I produced. It was great to see it in the market. I think the most rewarding thing I felt in my career, which is where was the turning point for me, was I really want to do this for the rest of my life, was when I was at LCI, as I'd mentioned before, and we had an issue with Walmart. They wanted to kick out the mops that they had, and I created this new packaging and branding, and it helped Walmart keep the mops on the shelves. They were worried about it being too legacy, so they wanted to refresh the brand, have customers buy it. You could see it in any Walmart today, actually, still on the shelves. It's a purple
Nice.
sponge mop packaging, but it was really empowering for me to say, wow, I made a difference. I secured a lot of funding for this company. It was $2 million. I saved 2 jobs, 2 blind and visually impaired jobs that would have been lost if Walmart kicked this product out. And it's just great to see your product on the shelves, see what you did in action in the environment. And that's what really drove me to really love graphic design. And that's what got me into doing this full time. And I haven't looked back, and I don't think I ever will.
Nice. I know, especially on that front, it's like there also is this satisfaction of like something like being completed. I feel like so much of
Mhm.
marketing is always ongoing in iterations and experimentations. I mean, obviously, there's probably some of that with graphic design, but like to your point, like you created this years ago and it's still on the shelf at Walmart. So it's kind of satisfying to see something actually like completed versus, oh yeah, it's live, but now we're just going to like continue to evolve it over time, which is what most marketing is, it seems. It's like the story of what is it, rolling the rock up the hill, and then it kind of comes crushing down on you, and then you have to roll it back up the hill again.
Yes. Yeah.
So Very cool. I know this actually, we were talking through. I'm like, this actually alludes into the conversation today where we were going to talk about the idea of being a brand owner. For me, it's specifically usually SaaS brands that I'm working with, but understanding that when you're wanting to create the brand and all the collateral and everything, what would you consider best practices for somebody that's just launching something? Like, are there tools out there that you would suggest using, or is it something that they could contract out, that they're just trying to get something to be able to launch with? Not necessarily like this is going to be the end that we're actually going to go market to and scale out, but something that like, hey, here's our visual identity, something to kind of go to market with as we're just trying to test an MVP. What would you suggest on that front?
And just to reiterate here, for my understanding as well, this is not just limited to graphic design. It could be their brand in general. What do they need that's on the market today to help that?
Right. So, like, I mean, they're going, I'm thinking like the landing page, the forward facing
Yeah,
website. It could be colors,
sure,
fonts, the logo.
sure, sure. What I would say first and foremost in the digital age that we're in, and Josh, I think you were already, I know there's just examples, but I think you're kind of hitting the nail on the head is you really want your digital presence to be there when you're starting a brand. If you're a young entrepreneur, it doesn't matter what age you are, but if you're young in the sense that you are just starting a business out,
Right.
right? You want to make sure that that brand itself has a presence on the web and a presence in general in the environment that you're looking to operate in. And that does entail having the logo, having your website built out, having content ready to be able to be findable in organic search, which is huge when you're just starting out, right? Because you're not necessarily going to have the overhead or the financing to really be competitive in the SEM space, or for those again who are unfamiliar with the acronym that are listening in, that's search engine marketing, right? That's the Google ads, that's the Bing ads, that's you know
Social.
social. Yeah, great point. Those tend to add up, especially social, because it's more, not to get too in the weeds here, but that's more impression based versus interaction based, right?
Right.
So again, it really boils down to having your presence available, accessible to those who are actually rather those who you are looking to target. I would also say there's two sides to this coin as well. So you could be a young entrepreneur or a business looking to scale and start up, and that would all apply. But the other side of this coin is if you are a business and you already have a market built out for you. For example, you're working at a HubSpot, for example, or you're working at an accountant firm, and you're making rapport with some of the clients that are with you, and you're scaling organically. They're getting to know your name, and you manage an account or two, and you take those accounts with you should it be okay with the business and start your own organization. Now, I know a lot of SaaS companies in the space that have done this. A couple that have one of our clients was CGA Associates. They took a bunch of clients with them from the firm that they used to work at. It was fine. When you have that type of environment, you want to make sure that you are building out your business. You're already findable, you have a market, but you want to make sure that your applications are adjusting to your bottom line, right? So that's your sales force. That's making sure you're tracking metrics, that you have a repository to collect customer information and act on it accordingly. I think there's a big difference there because, again, it's about scaling fast versus maintaining what you have and generating growth, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah, I know it's always tough because it's like even for me when I was building out the Continuify brand, it's like you want to have that mass appeal or at least look professional when you first launch. But at the same time, it's like I don't necessarily have all the resources to be able to build this out. Because I know when I worked at Red Hat, my sole job there was building and A/B testing landing pages, and they had this. I still have it on my bookshelf back there, but it was this design book that they're like read this because their whole idea was if we remove the Red Hat logo from the landing page and we were to push traffic to this, would people still know that it's Red Hat? So it was kind of crazy to think like of all the different elements with patterns and colors and fonts and even like the spacing, like the line heights of paragraphs was a certain percentage and that had to be consistent across the board. That it's like you think of all of these little elements as you're building out your brand identity of like, all right, like do I go this crazy or I'm an MVP and I just need to throw something together to at least have appeal and some recognition. And then of course, as I scale out and actually have revenue or I get a investing series, now I can go out and hire somebody and do this right, which we see this to these days. Like Nike just spent a good chunk of change on a rebrand, Jaguar for better or for worse, did a rebrand. I mean, Kia, what's the KN brand? It's like you
Yeah.
have these massive companies that they do these rebrands even years down the road. At what point, I guess from your perspective, what point do you consider brands to kind of make that pivot that it's like, all right, like you have the revenue. Is it just revenue, or is there a point of time that you're like, hey, this probably should be a good trigger moment to segue into a rebrand?
So you hit on a lot there, and I'd like to dissect some of that. So, for example, you had mentioned, young MVPs that should be more concerned about that strategic, or rather that more tactical view of structuring your brand so that it looks consistent. You have branding guidelines that you develop for yourself. And there is importance to that, especially nowadays with the dawn of e-commerce. Even if you're in a B2B space and you're selling B2B, you're still selling to someone who is generally used to shopping in a B2C environment, right? So you want to make sure that you're building that rapport. People are smarter now when they're on the web, regardless if it's a B2B role or a B2C role or what you're selling to. They know when they see a scam generally. They understand what a good structured site is most of the time, visually rather, not so much with the SEO and whatnot, but they understand what to look for, right? What feels good, what doesn't. One of our clients, for example, they are experiencing a lot of issues because they source from China, and a lot of their products don't look great, and customers are complaining on the web that, hey, you don't look trustworthy because the e-commerce products that you're representing are clearly, they resemble a lot of the dropship companies we used to buy from, and we're getting scammed, and we're getting clothes that don't even look like clothes anymore. Not to pivot, but people know what to look for, right? So if you're a young MVP, it's important to make sure that you don't have to have a guidebook. You don't have to have rules, right? Like a big organization like a Red Hat does, because you don't have 1,000 people to make sure that you're abiding by those rules, right? Those are your rules that you've made yourself. You know in your head how to scale that, right? So it's important to make sure that you are scaling it, that it looks consistent for your customer, but you don't need that rule book. When you start to grow your company, maybe, I don't know, around 20 or more, then you want to make sure that you have something that's more tangible for people to follow guidelines on, because then you start to get spin-offs all over the place. People, over in California could be doing something on your website that you hired that doesn't even sit well with your brand. They can use different text because they're not informed of which text to use. The hex color could be slightly different. So that's important. I think those are the cases where you'd want that guideline. You also mentioned something rather important, which is equity capital. And that's something that we don't do at Markiserv, but a lot of companies are doing that, at least. And we talked about before we started the podcast about the market today. Equity capital may be drying up in the future, yet to know. But if you are a brand and you want to scale quickly and you have assets of which to put up for equity capital, and that's something a lot of people don't realize when they're trying to get it, it's important that you are telling the story appropriately to those who are going to be giving you funding. And you will have to have that rule book, even if it is just you in the seat, because you need to tell that story. They are interested in investing. Yes, of course, they want return on equity when they invest with you, but they also want to invest in the story as well. And
Right.
that story is important, right, for their shareholders. And as silly as that sounds, especially someone like me who's more numbers based at this point in my life, it's important for their investors, whether it be, green, or whether it be, SaaS. Even SaaS investing firms want to make sure that the people that they're giving equity to have a certain portfolio so they could resell the brand or spin it off later in the future. So that's also fairly important to keep in mind when you are looking for equity or funding and building that brand as well.
I guess a segue from there is to your point that you're saying that you either get equity or that you get to that 20-person cap where it's like, all right, now there's multiple people. Sales is building presentation decks, marketing's building ads, the imagery that we're sharing on social could go a bunch of different directions. What is your, I guess, break points between like having an external like contractor fractional role that's managing this versus hiring an agency to try to rein more of this in, or bringing someone in-house and having like a creative director?
But highly depends. And it depends on the industry that you have. And this is where a lot of businesses, even large ones, hit a
Right.
crossroads. I see this less with small companies just because they don't have the capital to make these decisions. And they generally go with contractors because they don't have enough revenue to keep the lights on, but also pay for things like healthcare, for example,
Payroll
or 401,
taxes.
What was that? Sorry.
Payroll taxes.
Taxes, K plans, etc. And it's if you're doing graphic design or branding, website design, and you are at a crossroads to where you either want to hire, so there's a lot of different categories. So let's digest these. You can go with the individual solar contractor route on a sites like Fiverr or your other Fiverr-like websites. That's the first one
Work,
that comes.
market hire.
Thank you. You could go with a contracting agency like a Markiserv, or they're a dime a dozen. I hate to say it, but we are also a dime a dozen. There's thousands of us out there. Or you can go internal and hire somebody. And those are the three main funnels. We can dissect them even further, but let's just stick to that for the higher level here. And again, if you're a small business, let's start there. Not even a new entrepreneur on the block, but just a small business that's been around. Maybe you have a couple people on staff, mom and pop, maybe even. I would say if you're looking for branding expertise, you're looking to scale or marketing help, no matter what it is, you may want to go the contractor route. Maybe even a Fiverr or someone that you trust. Just because if you go the agency route or you hire somebody, there are going to be higher costs associated with that. Generally. Of course, there's different types of agency structures. You get subscription-based, you have contract-based, hourly, etc. That could vary extremely, but generally you want to stick to the solo entrepreneur to help you with your branding, of course, depending on how much revenue you're bringing in. Now, if you're a new entrepreneur on the block, you're generally going to do that yourself. Just usually how it goes. If you're a mid-sized company, you've been around a lot, you're established, there is an interesting crossroads here because depending on how much value you want to bring into your organization, and again, I'm going to make a disclaimer here. I am not going to bring any of my bias into this considering I do own an agency. So a lot of the stuff I am going to say is going to be contradictory to what I actually offer for my business model. But I don't care. I want to give your listeners the right feedback here if they're really trying to grow themselves.
Thanks, Ryan. Let's keep it real.
Yeah. And the reason why I say that is because it's going to probably sound contradictory to what I do, but if you're a mid-sized business, and again, you've been around some time, you might not want to go the contractor, or rather, the agency route, because agencies can get expensive if you have a lot of work that you need to do, and your hourly rates are going to go through the roof. That will eventually be more expensive if you're a contract-based organization, or rather, if you're contracting to an organization that has hourly rates. They're spending a lot of time on your organization. They're billing you for sitting in meetings. They're billing you for emails being sent, etc. That's going to add up, and you won't have that same capital that you would have with an internal employee, irregardless if you're paying them that 401k, the medical that you're saving if you're going the contractor or agency route. Because the hidden benefit of having your own employee is that if he or she is the right person for the job, of course, they're going to be plugged in and dedicated to your business. And that's something generally a contractor or an agency is not able to provide. Do we provide that at my firm? I'd like to say we do. But again, an employee has their own motivations and interests for being plugged into their employer. So, and if you're a larger business, I'm trying to change this a little bit, it also depends. If you're a large business and you have no interest in running your own marketing department, and you have a budget, you're going to want to go the contractor route almost 100% of the time. You're going to want a contractor that you want to keep on payroll for a significant amount of time, or an agency for a significant amount of time, like my own, for example, because certain agencies build their model around business dedication. So they are going to be plugged into your brand. They are going to be immersed in it because they're going to be with you through thick and thin over the couple physical years, so they can build that rapport. They understand the products, and they're able to produce graphic designs and branding that really sync with where you're trying to go and help sales growth, etc., and really understand your pipeline, top, middle, and bottom of funnel, you name it. So It does vary extremely. And I would say if you do, no matter what business you are, if you're a young entrepreneur, if you're small, medium, or large, and you really don't want to hire someone, make sure you hire a agency that really gets to know your business, because throughout my career, I've never found one that did. And it was a very I ran marketing departments, you name it, and it was always hard. We fired so many of them because they would just bring fluff. They'd bring analytics that didn't make any sense, and they wouldn't produce. Right. So no matter what agency you're looking for, make sure, even if it's not graphic design, you need to make sure that they are plugged into your business and that they really understand it or it's not going to bring any value to you whatsoever.
Yeah, I guess two things to play off of this. That yeah, I'm very much in that same boat when coming with working with agencies. It's like they usually have their process that they want to play. It's funny like when you work with an agency that's like, oh yeah, we can help you with personalization, but then it's still generalized because it's like they just don't know the ins and outs. I think even like with employees, especially like if you're not a remote first company, there's going to be so many conversations that those employees are having with each other when they're at the water cooler or
Yep.
going out to lunch together. Like they're obviously still going to be talking about work, that there's going to be a lot of cross conversations there that they're going to end up taking and be able to do a better job. That as a agency, like we just don't have that privy. It's like the only time we have engagements with you is when we're in that meeting. What's nice for me though is like being able to get access to their HubSpot. Like I get to see a lot of the behind the scenes and things that they're playing out. So that's usually one of the first things that I do when I'm working with my clients is like, I'm like, give me access to your HubSpot. And then I can jump in there and look at everything that's performing well from a data perspective and look at the emails, look at the landing pages, get access to the analytics to see what's performing well on the website. So I do get a little better at trying to understand their business. But at the same
Yep.
time, there's still that learning curve and trying to get through the training of all right, what makes sense for your guys' brand? How should we position it, market it, etc.
And you, if I may,
Yeah.
you leaned into something very important as well, Josh, because where the economy is heading, we might see a shift in how businesses are going to be operating again. And we may actually start to see, and we're seeing it already very slowly, businesses transition from the COVID era promises that they're giving employees and how they're functioning operationally, whether they're allowing remote work or flex or all in office. We're seeing that transition move back to office work again. And that's going to impact agencies like my own and yours and how we approach client work. So, for example, you and I were talking last week when my car was damaged and etc. We connected, and I mentioned to you that I'd been on site a lot lately at a few client jobs. And I'm starting to do that more now and my staff to get to immerse ourselves in our clients' operations and their sales funnel so we can understand how to drive impact. And that has made a big difference. And I would offer this advice to anyone listening here, if they're an entrepreneur, etc., or a business owner, is that you, again, very important that you make yourself visible if you're an agency or a contractor or you're providing some service level work to a B2B organization, because that visibility, taking the extra step to get to know that business is extremely important, and you're not going to scale the way you want to if you don't get to know these businesses, and they will talk amongst others to let them know that, hey, we have this great contractor, they're getting to know our business, let me introduce you. And that's the real gateway to growth and business success that anyone should be tapping into. And I would say now is a better time than later, considering the shift in the market that we will probably see over the next 2 years.
That even like reminds me of how it was even with my career. Like I was out full time, so I've been remote since COVID. And it was, I mean, even that, it's like a lot of times the conversations I was having with my coworkers was just when they needed something. There really wasn't any relationship building. So then it's like you're just the guy that gets work done. So like there's no, I guess it makes it easier for riffs and layoffs because like there's not that personal connection. Where to your point, it's like almost like jump, like if you're even a remote worker, like jump into the Slack communities if there is one and just try to build that relationship, build that, because that's what, like to your point, that's how they're going to remember you. I know a lot with like clients I work with or people that I'm trying to work with, like I just get active on their LinkedIn profiles. I start liking their stuff so that you kind of keep top of mind. I like the kind of quote unquote build the goodwill that's like, hey, he's helping me extend my reach by liking and commenting my post. It's simple, but a lot of people don't do it. But at the same time, to your point, it's like you're trying to build those relations and stay top of mind so that when they are making decisions, like they remember you. It's all these little tangible things that you just, to your point, like you used to, we'd all go to the office, or when we want to work somebody, we'd drive to their office and the relationship was in person, and now everything's kind of digitalized.
And
It's an
you brought,
interesting shift.
yes, and you also touched on another great point, Josh, which is entrepreneur, right? You're an entrepreneur yourself.
Right.
You're the salesperson, you're the marketer, right? And you're the leader. And there's a stark difference, and this is what I tell a lot of my peers, between marketing your business and selling it, right? And selling it has so many layers, as does marketing, but it's very, very different. And if you really want to sell that business or your business model to another organization, you're right. You want to be present. You want to be liking their Instagram posts. You want to be engaging in their brand. But a lot of things that our generation is not doing so much, and I say our generation because a lot of us are becoming those business owners now, larger than any generation previous to us, is that we should not lose the importance of physical interaction when building our brand or selling our own brand. And I can't tell you how much more lift I've seen in our sales by, yes, liking posts, starting off a soft engagement that way through the sales funnel, but then interjecting, say, hey, let me fly out to you. Let me take you out to dinner. Let me buy you a coffee. I don't, it's going to sound crazy, but I'll do this and let's get to know each other. Building that rapport, that bridge
Right.
is so, so valuable. And it stands out even more today, especially after COVID, because no one's really doing it as they used to.
And then even like building off of that, like even if that person doesn't become a customer, you built a relationship with them that they might
Right.
have referrals that they send in with you. Hey, I had this great guy. We're not working together, but he's a great guy. We had a good conversation. Maybe you need to talk to him. It's like playing the
Exactly.
long game
Yeah.
versus the short, quick sale.
Yep.
Very cool. From a kind of going back in the conversation a little bit, you were talking about the idea of hiring an agency if you don't want to do the marketing yourself. And I see this being something that is beneficial, like especially for SaaS brands, because a lot of times they're a developer that starts this platform. And this is kind of even how I position Continuify is that, yeah, you're a developer, you're a smart guy, you can figure out the systems, you can figure out how to make all of this work, but do you want to? Or do you want to just continue building your platform and then outsource the marketing and leverage HubSpot and have somebody else that's experienced do it for you? And we just have a couple of conversations where I learn about your brand, learn about why you built this platform, who it's for, and then I can kind of go to market for you. Being similar, would that be a good play for even the brand design where it's like going to a marketing agency, hey, I need you help with branding. I need help with my pitch decks. I need help with my social media imagery. I feel like that would be a good play as well in that situation.
Exactly right. 100%. I've had a lot of SaaS brands that we've done work for. Started a very similar way as you had mentioned. The gentleman or lady rather, always started as a developer, built their own product themselves, and they had zero interest at whatsoever in running HubSpot, generating leads, running marketing, creating graphic design, SEM ads. I mean, I can't tell you how many times they've come to me and they've said, I tried running SEM ads for my business, but it's just useless. And it's like, okay. And so, oh, I don't have the time to create pipeline for my business. And what advice I have to SaaS owners, founders, or entrepreneurs is do what your competency is. Do what you enjoy. Do what you've started your brand to do, which is code, which is build. You're going to be a business leader. You're going to have a lot of other responsibilities. That's when I would say fork over some spend, get a contractor, have them come in and be the expert for you so you do not have to worry about that. And you could focus on building your product because that's what's important for your customers is building your product, coding it out, and scaling it the way you know how to. And let other people do what they do to help grow your pipeline so you can continue to give, and more times than not, they want to give value. So I would say give that value to what you've built, to people you've built it for. Yeah.
Nice. So concluding the meat and potatoes, as you alluded to earlier, let's talk AI. What is your take on navigating AI and content generation? Obviously, there's a crazy amount of platforms out there where you can prompt and get a logo and a pitch deck. And I mean, I can go on addcreative.ai and get all of my SEM banner ads. What's your take? And obviously, we're probably both going to be biased on this because we like the human interaction. But what's your take on like leveraging AI in the graphic design field?
Don't do it. Never do it. And I don't say that because I own a business that's centered around it. Yes. I say that because the AI is not there right now. And there's a lot of different reasons I say no. Am I biased? Probably. Everybody has a bias. But it's important to understand that AI is not inherently creative yet. And a lot of the best graphic design tools today, and I'm going to say a buzzword that I know a lot of listeners may be very interested in, compliance, legality, lawsuits. They are taking from previous designs and then just repurposing them to meet your prompt's expectations. So I can't tell you how many cases there are open right now, whether it be at state or federal courts, where organizations have gone to the table to use AI to generate something, and they're like, oh, that's exactly or very similar to something we have copyrighted. And lo and behold, the AI model actually took from a pre-existing design to make something for the prompt, right? So, your ideograms, even ChatGPT have done things like this. So it's very important to understand that first and foremost, you want to protect your business. Legality is a big concern. Second, AI is not that great at generating. It's good. It's getting better. I will admit that, but it's not as good as a human in the seat. And generally, a business, if you're paying for a full-time graphic designer internally, if you're contracting it out to a Fiverr employee, or you're even having an agency do it for you, you do not want to pay that person on your payroll or in your budget for going to AI and having it design something for you. You might as well just pay a subscription to AI. So if you're another graphic design agency and you're doing that, stop. They will find out eventually and they will remove you from their payroll. Don't do that. But another thing that's important is you also have privacy issues with AI too. And, I know ChatGPT is a homegrown US made solution, but it still has risk associated with it. A lot of folks do not understand AI. A lot of organizations that we work with have compliance and with their IT org within their business, where they don't allow use of any AI tools because they're unpredictable, they're not secure, they don't understand the security around it. So that's another problem. Your data is not private in a lot of cases, depending on the model that you're using. So you have to make sure that, that's another thing you want to button down. So again, that's another con with AI. But I'll go ahead and talk some pros if anyone's interested, so I don't sound too biased here. A pro to AI is that it is able to generate content at scale, very low cost, and very fast. And if you're a young entrepreneur and you don't have the capability to do design yourself, leverage AI for the short term. Do not use it for the long term. It'll help save you overhead. It'll get content on the board for your brand. But I caution you, do not get into the habit of leveraging it long term.
That's even my thoughts, especially working with SaaS brands. It's like if you have a platform that takes, and now all of a sudden you're making 20, 30, 50 million ARR a year, like you have a target on your back at that point that people are going to like go through your brand with a fine tune and just try to figure out ways to get money from you. We live in a sue happy country. So to your point, like if you are using AI and it's leveraging anything that's even resembles another brand and they're like, hey, here's a free paycheck, it gets spicy real quick.
Yes. And in your space, Josh, I'm not exactly sure how AI comes into play. I know it can code to some degree, and that's still, I do know a lot of developers, and they say AI is great for base code, but it can't get in depth yet, and it can build games, etc. So there is some application, but what are some of the risks that you run into? I'm just curious, out of curiosity, in your side of the space.
Even from my perspective, you jump on LinkedIn and you see it all day long where, oh, this comment was AI generated or this post was AI generated. I even jumped in today. I guess LinkedIn is going out and blacklisting a lot of brands. So I guess Apollo just got blacklisted because they're scraping LinkedIn or doing some sort of automation with AI with LinkedIn where they're posting comments on behalf. And of course, that's against LinkedIn's T's and C's. It's against like their business models. Like they want you to be on Sales Navigator to do all of this. So it's like if you're using a third party that has AI to do marketing automation against the LinkedIn platform, like they don't want that. So that's just one use case. It's interesting though, like the amount of people that are using platforms like Synthesa or what's some other ones, HeyGen, where it's an AI model where they're creating videos with it that they're not necessarily wanting to build the video themselves or they use an AI model. I guess it's not as crazy because like you're providing it the script that it's just creating the video for you and creating an avatar with. So it's different. But yeah, it is interesting. Like the amount of, I mean, especially in the sales world, the amount of people that are using AI for the scripts or the follow-ups. And to your point, like AI models, like they're just built off of something that already exists in the world. They're not really creating anything new. They're just repurposing something else that answers your prompt. And some of them, I mean, even some of the platforms, they'll give you the citations, and everybody erases the citations. This is mine. And it's like, well, it's not really yours. Like, so it is interesting to see. I'm with you. I feel like in the long run, we're going to see crazy amount of lawsuits. I mean, even in the music industry, you're already starting to see it where people are using AI to create music. But of course, at that point, it's sampling other music, which back in the day, like you had to pay to sample music. So it's interesting to how even a record studio is going to be able to like get sue happy and say, hey, like you created that beat by sampling this. And yet, yes, it's different, but we figured out that you are using AI and it sampled our music. So it's going to be interesting to see the amount of case studies. And like to your point, it's going to be some Wizard of Oz behind the curtain because they don't want everybody to be like, oh no, like you can't do this because it's compliance or legalities. But I feel like as it more and more becomes more prevalent, we'll probably start seeing that it'll still exist, but the situation will be like, you can only use this to leverage content you've already created versus creating something net new off of stuff that's on the internet already, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. I do have an interesting case study for you, actually,
Okay.
regarding AI use. And this is actually an interesting, believe it or not, shocks myself, but it's a pro to it. And I have someone on staff here at Markiserv that does content for us. So
Okay.
we have folks that do graphic design for external clients, and we have one or two folks on staff that will alternate and do our own work for us for our own brand now. And we were running a case study on AI use in content generation for our website, and we would monitor this over time with our SEO performance. So we essentially built, and we wouldn't leverage AI, mind you, for pure content generation, because again, to the point that we're both making, it does take, right? It does not give true creative output. But what we noticed was we did around 3 months of, this is a very long-term test because SEO is, as you know, very long-term to see results. We did 3 months of pure human-generated research and content generation, and then a tailwind 3 months of AI-generated research and some content input to help structure the outline for blog posts and page content. And interestingly enough, AI allowed us to produce more than we had with the just straight human use. And with the content that was generated from AI, we actually saw, so let's just say, let's go back a step. So with the pure human generated content, we saw around maybe 5 to 7 point increase in search position.
Okay.
When we shifted to AI assistance to help with the workload, the research, and some outline structure, we actually increased our position on search for our general website by 35% in 2 months.
Wow.
Because it was able to create more for us. So we didn't have to sit in the chair for so long. We were generating, pumping more out. We had humans working the content, creating it themselves, but taking from the research generated by AI. And I think that is an argument for it in some cases. If you are short on resources and you want to churn content and you're a small navigatable, entrepreneur, I think that it makes a good case to leverage it. But again, not for pure generation, not just copy paste, here you go. Even if you're trying to get backlinks, for example, you're operating on quoted, you're operating on featured and the like, they will scan what you put in there for AI content. So please,
Right.
listeners, do not do that. But there are pros to it as well.
Right. No, I agree on that front, especially I'm sure they're over in the long run. I mean, Google is going to be incentivized to do some sort of, was this created by AI? I mean, because they're going to want to push up Gemini. But I agree. Using these tools as like a research, because it's basically doing the same thing that you're going to do personally. Like I'm going to go out to the internet. I mean, unless it's something that's like pure like thought leadership, where it's based off of my personal experience that I'm writing about. But if it's something where I'm wanting to relate to something third party, then I mean, all these AI tools are going to kind of do the same process that I would do, is like going out to the internet, going to Google, reading a bunch of different blogs and thoughts, and kind of get an idea of like how people are talking about this, and then give my 2 cents about it. So I like using it as a research tool, but to your point, don't just copy and paste it, like bring it in. Like I'm big on analogies and like trying to like reference things to like dating, like marketing and dating, and like little anecdotes that I inject in my writing just to kind of give it a personal flair. And then also going through everything and making sure that it's on using brand voice. Cause then it starts to look really, really weird. Like if you were to just copy and paste, like as someone's going through your blog, it's like, are 50 different people writing this blog? But the author's always the same. So what's going on here? So it's like going through, and even to this topic, it's like going through all of your content, and like you should have a certain like brand personality or brand voice that you're trying to like portray in the market, trying to make that as consistent as possible as well. So it's not just going on ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever and just copying and pasting. Like actually read through it. Is it make sense? Add your points, obviously build upon it. Like just don't copy and paste, but use it as a research tool, build upon it, match your brand voice, and then publish. But like to your point, it's gonna drastically be able to increase the amount of work. I know Neil Patel, he's big in the SEO space. He wrote a blog that was similar about this, where he's like, yeah, I'm leveraging AI for this, and this was how my army of content writers, and we put them against each other, and he saw similar results. That he's like, yeah, it's a volume play. Part of the algorithm, I know, especially with Google, is even consistency too. So it's like you don't just go out to the AI platforms, create a bunch of content, and then go quiet for 6 months, and then create a bunch of content and then go quiet for 6 months. So I think that's even part of the SEO game, is you have a better cadence when it's actual people building the content, which you can use AI, and you just want to have like a very similar cadence that, yeah, we could go out and create 100 blogs right now using AI, but should we? Because we have to keep it that volume. Otherwise we'll kind of get docked in the algorithm.
Yeah. And
But
this,
it's interesting conversation.
it is. And actually, there's a nifty little trick that someone could use to see if what you're reading is actually generated by AI. And if the website is citing links, you
Right?
could see within the URL if it's actually sourced from ChatGPT or something similar. Because ChatGPT will insert if it was referred by them within the domain. So it's kind of interesting too. If you're just combing around and you're feeling suspicious and they're hyperlinking within the article, and maybe
Okay.
they're not as educated about that, they won't know to remove that, and that'll be in
Interesting.
the URL structure. So it's quite interesting to look at.
I never even looked into. I haven't done much with ChatGPT, so I
Yeah.
haven't really looked into that. But that's very interesting. I know there is ways. I was on LinkedIn today, and I guess there's ways that they're like, hey, you want to show up on ChatGPT or Gemini? Like, I guess you can share content with them, because right now they're like scraping an older version of the web. But I guess there's a way now that you can say, oh no, like you can use this content that's new and use it in your responses to prompts as a way of hoping to get backlinks and actually show up in those responses, I guess, lack of words. And then even me personally, I'm just like, it takes, like when I use it, I feel, to your point, like from a legal compliance standpoint, I feel like I'm stealing, because I'm like, this isn't mine. Like I don't even have the sense of pride that like I actually created this when I even use it for research, because I'm just like, oh, I didn't put all the effort into it.
Yeah. Yeah. It well, that's ethical. And there are ethical implications, yes. I don't know. It's we'll have to see where the space nets out in the next. I would say I would give it a minimum of 7 years, and I think at that benchmark or milestone, we'll start to say, okay, can AI really be a substitute at this time for human generated work? I think it'll be within the next 7 years minimum, and then we'll have to see where it goes from there. But until then, I think it's safe to say that human generated work is far superior and should be relied upon, at least at this time. Yeah.
Completely agree. Well, that probably does a good segue for closing topics. But yeah, thanks, Ryan, for jumping on this podcast today and sharing your point of view on branding. And we obviously went down a bunch of different tangents, but that's off the dome. Like there is a script to this and a core theme, but it's definitely going to go, as we're having the conversation, a bunch of different directions. But thanks again for being on the show. As a concluding thought, we'll give you your 5 minutes for shameless plug. Why should people work with you, Ryan?
I'm not all about plugs. If anyone does want to work with me, they can feel free to reach out. But, you could find me on the web, markiserv.com. That's where you could find us. But if honestly, we mentioned this in the podcast, if I can recall correctly, and, most agencies or a dime a dozen, they don't focus on your business. We do, and our commitment to that is we don't have hourly charges. We don't have contracts you can't get out of. We just have a subscription, which is monthly. And I think that's our claim to fame. You can see our work for yourself if you go on the website. I'm not going to talk about that. You can make your own decision. If it's terrible, don't go with us. If you don't like it. But again, we can promise where other people cannot, which is focusing on your business. So if you do business with us, you have a direct representative that will get to know your business inside and out. And I think that's our bread and butter. And that's been our success. We go to see you, we go to hang out, we get to know your nuts and bolts, and we build around your organizations. That's my shameless plug, Josh. So
It's always so awkward because every time I say that, yeah, it's like, yeah, shameless plug. It's like, I can actually have a shameless plug. Like, I don't know what I want to say. And half the time, like talking with people, like their marketer background. So I'm like, I don't want to sell. I just want to market.
Well, honestly, I just like being on podcasts. I didn't do it for the blog.
Yeah,
I did it because when you actually contacted me about this, I thought what we could provide to your audience and the platform that you're trying to build right now is it's very valuable, and I think it's not touching upon a lot of what people don't have access to today, which is understanding how to scale a business if you're a nimble organization or you're starting out. Most of the podcasts today are focusing on folks that are releasing a major publication, or they have a net worth of over $1 million, and not a lot of organizations are touching on the folks that really know the tactics in their space. And I think it's a great way to contribute to your audience and listeners that are really trying to understand the nuts and bolts of how to run a business in the digital space. That was my primary motivation. So I wish you the best of luck with this podcast. It's a great platform.
Awesome. Thanks again, Ryan. This is Markiserv. Till the next one, guys. Keep building.
Bye-bye.
See you, Ryan.